On today's crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Giants, Locked On Cowboys, can the struggling Dallas Cowboys maintain their hold over a Giants team that currently has some momentum behind it? That's coming your way next.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
This episode of the Locked On Giants, Locked On Cowboys crossover Thursday is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL in all lowercase letters to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. PrizePicks, run your game. Hello, everybody. Welcome on in to this special crossover edition, Locked On Giants, Locked On Cowboys. I am Patricia Traina, Locked On Giants host, and he is Marcus Mosier. He is co-host of Locked On Cowboys, and we are here with Crossover Thursday. We're going to get you ready for Thursday night football, everything you need to know about tonight's Dallas Cowboys game at the New York Giants. The Cowboys coming off a 2-game losing streak. At home, by the way, they haven't looked very good. The Giants coming off a big win against the Cleveland Browns, a team that the Cowboys beat in week 1 of the season. And Marcus, first off, welcome on in. It's always good to see you. And we've got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is quite a big game for both of these teams, right, Patricia? It feels like neither of these franchises can afford to go down 1-3 on the season. And then one of them will, and obviously we're going to have some big questions coming out of this game on either side.
Yeah, and speaking of questions, Marcus, since the Cowboys are the visiting team, let's get an overview as to what's been going on, where you see the problems, and can they overcome them in time for Thursday's game?
Yeah, it all starts on defense. I mean, their defense has been historically bad, and I'm not exaggerating. Like, the game against the Saints was the worst defensive performance the Cowboys have had in their franchise history. They allowed 35 points in the first half of that game, and I think they were even worse against Baltimore. I mean, Baltimore could do whatever they wanted on that side of the ball. The Cowboys had no answers. They look like a team that is in disarray, at least on that side of the ball. Now it's starting to bleed over into the offense, where the Cowboys offense is starting to feel that pressure of, hey, we got to score every possession, and you're seeing drops, mental mistakes, players giving up pressures that usually wouldn't give up pressure. This is what happens to bad teams. Things start to compound, and I think the Cowboys really need a win in week 4 in order to kind of steady the ship here.
Marcus, how much did Jerry Jones's lack of activity in the offseason really come back to bite this team?
Well, I mean, it doesn't help that they didn't really improve the team this offseason, right? Now, the Cowboys' philosophy and Jerry Jones's philosophy is draft, develop, play young guys, which they've done. No team in the NFL has played more rookies in the first 3 weeks of the season than the Dallas Cowboys. So you would expect some struggles right out of the gate. The problem is they've had a bunch of veterans that haven't been able to step up. So that's not good. On top of that, Patricia, I think they got old at a couple spots. Safety, Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, both those guys are in their 30s or close to the 30s. They've struggled. Eric Kendricks has not played well. He was one of the few additions that the Cowboys brought in. He's not played well the last couple of weeks. They only signed one veteran running back. That's Ezekiel Elliott. He's averaging 3.3 yards per carry. So even in the small moves that the Cowboys did make this offseason, those guys they're just not playing well. So you're really relying on your young players, and unfortunately, they just haven't performed up to the standard yet. So yeah, I think the front office does deserve quite a bit of blame here.
I read that there was opinion expressed that the Cowboys did not practice well going into this past weekend's game. Mike McCarthy has been there for a few years. I mean,
5 years.
5 years. And really, the Cowboys can get to the postseason, but they can't really stay in it for long. Do you think at this point a change is necessary because they're just either tuning out McCarthy or just for whatever reason it's not a fit?
So I thought after the playoff game last year, the way that they were embarrassed at home against Green Bay, something needed to change, right? Like you just can't go back into the 2024 season with the same exact core of, Jerry Jones as the owner, Mike McCarthy as the head coach, and Dak Prescott as the quarterback. You think things are going to get better. I agree with the decision to pay Dak. I didn't agree with the decision to bring back Mike McCarthy. I don't think he's a bad coach at all. You look at his track record, it's very, very good. The Cowboys have won 12 games in each of the last 3 years, but it's just clear that I think they've reached the ceiling with him as a coach, and they need to go out and get their next guy to kind of help take them over the top. Now with McCarthy in a lame duck year, I think you're starting to see some of the pressure and some of the cracks in this front office and this organization. And yeah, they didn't have a good Thursday practice. It was sloppy. It was rough. There was drop passes all over the place. And unfortunately, they usually get that corrected during the game. They have a bad practice. Usually it ends up meaning they have a good game. Now they're starting to have bad performances in the actual game on top of bad practices. It's just not a great sign of where the Cowboys are at right now.
Now, the Cowboys have obviously a new defensive coordinator after Dan Quinn left to become head coach at Washington. Same play caller in McCarthy, but what changes have you seen on both offense and defense? And are they promising or are they going nowhere?
Well, let's start with Mike Zimmer. I was a big fan of the Mike Zimmer hire. I do think he's one of the best defensive-minded coaches in the league. One of the things that we talked about on Locked On Cowboys all offseason is this is a complex defense. It's going to take them some time to learn Mike Zimmer and how he wants to play. So expect some early season struggles. I didn't expect it to be this bad. And now you wonder, like, if they have another performance like that, will the players stop buying in to Mike Zimmer, or will you get in such a hole where you're not able to dig yourself out of it? The Cowboys had this happen in 2020 when Mike Nolan was their new defensive coordinator. He was gone after a year. I'm starting to wonder if this is not a similar situation here where, as much as I love Mike Zimmer, it's just not a fit. And it's too complex of a defense for the Cowboys to learn this quickly. And with so many good opponents coming up, including the 49ers, the Lions, obviously the Giants this week, I wonder if their defense isn't going to be too far away compared to what we saw last year.
Only 4 days for the Cowboys to turn it around, Marcus. Realistically speaking, can they fix this?
Well, the good news for the Cowboys is that they've had a lot of success against the Giants over the last decade, right? Like, this is one of the teams that they play really well against, and it's one of the quarterbacks that they play really well against. They know Daniel Jones. They know what he wants to do. They know where he wants to go with the ball. So I think on a short week, that does help, right? Like, short weeks can be hard if you're going against an uncommon opponent. At least with Daniel Jones, this is an offensive coordinator or an offensive scheme that they know and a coach that they know. If they're going to get their defense right, it does feel like this is a week to do it. If it doesn't happen this week, Patricia, I'm officially worried that this could be a team that completely collapses before we even get to October.
That's some scary stuff there for Dallas Cowboy fans. I mean, quite frankly, Marcus, was this type of start expected?
Well, I think a 1-2 start was expected, to be honest with you. You look at the schedule, played at Cleveland, home against the Saints, at the Ravens. I don't think anybody would have been shocked to see the Cowboys start off 1-2, right? But I think the way that it happened is the most discouraging, right? They played really well against the Browns in week 1. They absolutely dominated in that game. Were blown out in week 2, and then they were mostly blown out in week 3 before they kind of fought their way back into that game, even though the game was not as close as the final score indicates. They just haven't played really well. And even, Patricia, back in that first week of the season against the Browns, they did nothing on offense in the second half. Nothing. They couldn't convert a single third down. Their only points in that second half were on a punt return touchdown. There hasn't been one half where they've looked fantastic on both sides of the ball. And I think that's what has me the most concerned. Like, they just have not played good football yet.
All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about the Giants. The Giants coming off the big win against the Cleveland Browns. And how do they stack up against the Dallas Cowboys on this crossover edition of Locked On Giants, Locked On Cowboys? Do not go anywhere. This episode of Crossover Thursday between the Locked On Giants and Locked On Cowboys podcast is brought to you in part by Gametime. When I'm not covering the New York Giants, I enjoy going to live events, be they concerts, plays, or other sporting events. And with Gametime, I never have to worry about being shut out of any event. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting the tickets for favorite events even easier. Gametime Picks filter out the fluff to show you only the most incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. With Gametime, there are no hidden fees. You'll know exactly what you're paying for before you check out. You'll get clear images of your seat views, and you'll also get event cancellation protection. And if you find tickets elsewhere in the same section and row for less, Gametime will give you 110% of the difference. So go on and get the tickets that you want. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, everybody, welcome back to Crossover Thursday, special crossover edition, Locked On Giants, Locked On Cowboys. He is Marcus Mosher, co-host of Locked On Cowboys. I'm Patricia Traina, host of Locked On Giants. And now it is time to talk about the New York Giants and how they stack up against the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm going to start off, Giants basically in desperate need of a win last week against Cleveland. The Browns have been kind of a shaky team. Giants came up big against the Cleveland Browns. Now, there are still skeptics out there who said, well, the Cleveland Browns offensive line was banged up and Deshaun Watson's not very good and this, that, and the other thing. But let's give credit where credit is due. The Giants, they buckled down. The pressure was on. They knew an 0-3 start to the season would be basically the death knell to their season. And they banded together, put together a solid game against that Cleveland Brown. The pass rush, which we had begun to wonder, when's it going to wake up? 8 sacks against the Cleveland Browns. And of those 8, 7 came on a blitz. Now, defensive coordinator Shane Bowen absolutely breaking the mold, looking a little bit like Wink Martindale in the game that he called. A lot of blitzing I think it was close to 55%, if I'm not mistaken, on the blitz. And it got home and they got pressure on him. Offensively, what else can we say about Malik Neighbors that hasn't been said already? This young man is just a godsend. He is an absolute godsend. He has helped open things up for the offense. He's made the offensive passing game look much better. Daniel Jones has looked better. I saw a stat where Jones has attempted, I believe it's 9 deep pass attempts so far through 3 games. He only attempted 11 in 6 games last year. So the deep passing game, certainly there. The underneath passing game there. The one concern I have about the Giants going into this game, who's going to line up and defend CeeDee Lamb, the slot receiver for the Dallas Cowboys? The Giants currently have injuries to all 3 of their main slot cornerback candidates. Drew Phillips, the rookie, who's the starter. Adoree Jackson, who can fill in there for him. Nick McLeod, who can also fill in if need be. So I think that's going to necessitate the Giants putting Cordell Flott, who had been starting for them on the outside, in the slot against CeeDee Lamb. And that's a matchup that I'm not feeling for the Giants. I mean, we'll have to see, but I think, if they go that route, I'm not really feeling that one. But if Cordell Flott, who's been starting on the outside at CB2, ends up having to play in the slot, who's going to play that CB2 position? That's the big question for me. And that's where I'm concerned, because the Cowboys do have, some very good receivers. Dak Prescott, when he has time, he can sling the ball all over the field. That would be my biggest concern for the Giants going into this game.
I want to ask you about the running game, because obviously the Cowboys can't stop the run. They allowed 274 rushing yards last week against the Ravens. The Ravens going to rush for 300 if that game was a little bit closer. But how have the Giants been running the ball without Saquon Barkley this year?
It's interesting. I was just writing a response to my colleague over on Dallas Cowboys on SI.com about that very same topic. Devin Singletary, the lead running back, is not flashy like Saquon.
No.
He doesn't have the household name. He wears the same jersey number, but not, not quite in Saquon's, league, if you will. That being said, Singletary has been surprisingly effective. All right. I did a sorting of some stats over on Pro Football Focus, and Devin Singletary, based on running backs who have at least 40 snaps, I'm sorry, 40 rushing attempts, Devin Singletary is second in yards after contact, 3.93 yards after contact. That's behind Aaron Jones of the Vikings. The yards per attempt, Singletary is, I think, 4.7 yards per attempt. Not too bad. That's ranked eighth, I believe. And the sample size is 19, by the way, 19 running backs who have at least 40 rushing attempts rather. Missed tackles. This is a big one. This was kind of surprising to me. Devin Singletary has forced 17 missed tackles, which is second behind 49ers running back Jordan Mason. So the running game hasn't looked sexy or glamorous, but it's been effective when they have put it into action. And, the one thing Devin Singletary needs to clean up is he's had a fumble in each of the last two games, and we just can't have that.
Patricia, there's a lot of star players in this game between Malik Neighbors, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, Brian Burns. But the best player in this game might be our nose tackle, Dexter Lawrence, which I'm still furious that he didn't get an all-pro, first-team all-pro win last year. It just boggles my mind. How come I'm going to make the argument. I think he might be the single best defensive player of the year or in the league. How come he doesn't get more national attention?
I don't know. That's a very, very good question. Maybe because he's quiet. Maybe because, he's so loose at pressers. Maybe because he doesn't do anything stupid to get himself in the headlines like some of these other guys do.
Like you don't even have to watch, you don't have to watch the coach's film to watch him on Sundays and see that guy is a world beater. I mean, he is amazing.
And the funny thing is coming out of that Washington loss at week 2, he was ticked off. I mean, it was plain as day. And Dexter's pretty much a happy-go-lucky type of guy. He's always got a pleasant demeanor. He's always smiling. Just a joy to be around. But he was angry, really angry after that Washington loss. And he made that perfectly clear. And he said, this is just not acceptable. And you kind of got the impression, and Dexter's one of the defensive captains, by the way, you got the impression that he was going to have something to say about it. And I don't know what he said to his teammates or what went down on the meeting rooms and whatnot, but boy, you saw that defense come out and they were playing like men on missions. And of course that was all led by Dexter Lawrence.
And in this game, obviously Malik Neighbors is going to get his, right? And I think Brian Burns and Thibodeau are both going to have good performances, but there's only so much you can do against a dominant nose tackle. And that's, of all the players in this game, that's the one that has me the most concerned. The Cowboys have a rookie center in Cooper Beebe, who I really like. He's not going to be ready for Dexter Lawrence. And if they can't figure out a way to somewhat control Lawrence in this game, that's how Dallas loses, right? If he's pushing the middle of the pocket, if making Dak have to step back or slide out of the pocket, the Cowboys are going to be in trouble. So keep an eye on the big nose tackle there, who again might be the best defensive player in the NFL that nobody talks about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, Dexter Lawrence, you watch him on tape, single blocking isn't going to get it done against the sky. Double team blocking, all right, maybe you could slow him down a little bit, but that's not going to completely take him out of the game. And, every time Dexter comes off the field for a breather, you sit there and you say, okay, where are they going? Sure enough, they go right at Dexter's backup, which is usually Jordan Riley. And, he is that much of a difference maker for the Giants. 2019 first round pick for the Giants, 103. He was the second one, taken 17th overall. And what an absolute, steal that was at number 17 for the New York Giants. So glad to have him on the team.
Can I ask you one more question quickly about Daniel Jones? Where are the Giants fans at now with Daniel Jones? Are they wanting to move on after this year? Has he shown enough through 3 games to kind of take some of that noise away? Where are we?
I think it's still split. You still have your hardcore, let's get rid of Daniel Jones fans. You have some people who are like, okay, he's played well in the last 2 games, but then you have the negative people who will say, oh, well, Washington's defense was bad. Cleveland's defense, a little bit better. I think we can agree that Cleveland's defense is a little bit better than Washington's. Now, if Daniel Jones has another good game against Dallas, people are going to turn around and say, oh, Dallas's defense is historically bad. So you're always going to have your nitpickers with Daniel Jones. But I think you can say that other than maybe for the first game where he did not play well, and yeah, you could probably make the case last week that it was a tale of 2 halves, but ultimately you could probably make the case that the Giants are winning with him, not necessarily because of him. And I think what a lot of people would like to see is that the Giants get to the point where they are winning because of Daniel Jones. You look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they win because of Patrick Mahomes. The Giants are not there yet with Daniel Jones. Whether they get there, I don't know. But right now, he's very, he's kind of split the fan base. And the critics have quieted down a little bit. But, all it takes is one bad throw or one mishap, and you'll hear the boo birds coming at him once again. So
interesting.
Yeah.
This is a huge game for him. It's a primetime game. All eyes are going to be on him. Everybody knows the Cowboys defense is struggling right now. I think you're right. Like if he comes out and has a poor performance against this Cowboys defense and the Giants media has 10 days to discuss it and break it down, I think that's when you maybe get some talk about, hey, should we start looking at other options and whatever. But this is a massive, massive game for not only the Giants, but kind of Daniel Jones's career. And I hate to say that on a Thursday night, week 4 game, like it's one game, but I think this is big for the national perception of Daniel Jones.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see how he and the Giants offense do. The offensive line's been playing well, surprisingly. I mentioned the running game, Malik Neighbors. I mean, so a lot of positives so far, a lot of things to build on. So, all right, coming up next, we're going to talk about keys to each team's victory on this special crossover edition. Locked on Giants, Locked on Cowboys. Don't go anywhere. This episode of Crossover Thursday is brought to you in part by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the very same page where you place your bets. Get a jump start on the NFL season, and right now, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. The new Locked On NFL is here. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop for a visit with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL and it's twice a day. Make the new Locked On NFL your second listen on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, everybody, welcome back to this special crossover Thursday edition. Locked On Giants, Locked On Cowboys. He is Marcus Mosher, co-host of Locked On Cowboys. I'm Patricia Traina, host of Locked On Giants. And Marcus, give me your keys to a Cowboys victory.
Number 1, the Cowboys have to earn the right to rush the passer in this game. In the last 2 games, they've been atrocious on first and second down. In fact, in week 2 against the Saints had 1 third down in the entire first half of that game. The Cowboys have been absolutely awful against the run. I'm not saying they have to go out there and hold Devin Singletary to 3 yards per carry, but be good enough against the run so that you can get the Giants in 3rd and 5s and 3rd and 6s, where now you can allow Micah Parsons to tee off against the center, or you can see some of these exotic blitzes from Mike Zimmer. We've seen none of that over the last couple of weeks because they've been so bad against the run. So earn the right to rush the passer. Number 2 is they need to just play sound football. Last week, first drive of the game, they had a false start. Then they had an illegal formation. Then they had drops. They had receivers running the wrong routes. They had offensive linemen missing blocks. You don't need to play a perfect game, but just play a sound football game. Don't make it look like a JV squad out there. Make it look like you're play like an NFL franchise and that you've actually practiced. If they do that, I think they'll have success. And number 3, get CeeDee Lamb involved early in this game. Was not involved much in the Ravens game early on. The offense just does not flow very well when Dak Prescott's having to throw to Jalen Tolbert, Kevontae Turpin, Brandon Cooks. The Cowboys are going to win this game if CeeDee Lamb can have 75 yards in the first half. So design touches for him, get him matched up against linebackers, get him in zone coverage, and that's where he can perform well. If not, and if the Giants double him and now it's, okay, you're throwing to Brandon Cooks 30 yards down the field and he's covered, that's where the Cowboys offense can get in a lot of trouble. So look for CeeDee Lamb to have a big impact early in this game.
Yeah, I agree. And that would be one of my keys for the Giants. Again, I mentioned in the first segment, or rather the last segment, about how the Giants, the slot cornerback position is kind of up in the air due to injuries right now. So stopping CeeDee Lamb, who has toasted the Giants in just about every matchup that they face, that's going to be of utmost importance because Dak Prescott, look, most people will say, get the quarterback, pressure the quarterback. Dak Prescott has actually done well when under pressure. I just checked on Pro Football Focus. He's completed 60% of his passes under pressure, 64.5% when blitz. And that's because Dak can move around and slide around in the pocket. Yep. So, you could say, rush the passer. I don't think the Giants are going to blitz as much as they did last week.
They won't need to. They won't need to. Cowboys tackles are not very good right now. And again, they're starting a rookie center. So I don't think the Giants are going to need to blitz to create pressure.
Exactly. So the key is going to be the back end of the defense because, look, those Cowboy receivers are dangerous. And like I said, Dak can move around. He can take off with his legs. He's got to be accounted for. So somebody will probably have to spy him. I wonder if it's going to be Isaiah Simmons because Isaiah Simmons spied Jaden Daniels in that game. So maybe they put a spy on him. So that's definitely something to do. Don't let Dak Prescott beat you either with his arm or with his legs because he is pretty good when under pressure. The other thing, obviously, for the Giants, they can't be making mistakes. Every game the Giants have made some kind of mistake, whether it's a fumble, a turnover, an interception, a near interception. You can't have that. This team is not good enough to overcome some of these mistakes that they've been making. So that is a concern. And I'm going to give you one more, Marcus, that we haven't talked about. They better figure out this kicker situation. I mean, last week, Greg Joseph came in for the injured Graham Gano. And what happens? Greg Joseph misses a 48-yard field goal attempt that he should have made. Brian Dable said, he practiced well all week, but we can't have misses like that. I'm nervous about the kicker situation because, look, thank goodness for that the defense came out and stopped the Browns last week on that final drive. But if Greg Joseph makes that field goal, we're not even having this discussion. We're saying, okay, all's right in the world of the Giants again. So I am concerned about special teams, particularly the kicker situation, some of the coverage situations, especially on punts, the gunner play, because, again, they're banged up there. Bryce Ford-Wheaton is one gunner. Nick McLeod in the past has been another, but he's been sidelined due to an injury. So they can't allow the Cowboys to have advantageous field position. And that's kind of what they've been giving up. Yep. And we haven't been talking about that a lot in the land of the Giants here, but that's something definitely that the Giants need to pay attention to because you give the Cowboys a short field and guess what? They will score on you. So I would say that's key.
I just wanted to mention really quick, the Cowboys have played terribly on both sides of the ball this year. They just have. The one bright spot has been their kicker, Brandon Aubrey. He kicked a 65-yarder last week that would have been good from 72. And in fact, in week 1 against the Browns, he lined up for a 71-yard field goal, but for the Cowboys decided to throw a Hail Mary instead. Brandon Aubrey might be the biggest cheat code in all of the NFL right now. He's got the biggest leg in the league. And he just doesn't miss kicks. And man, I am knocking on wood so hard that it doesn't start happening because we've seen it. Even Justin Tucker can get the yips, but the Cowboys have a real weapon in Brandon Aubrey right now. And in the games, big divisional games on Thursday Night Football, that could end up making the difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Must be nice to have a kicker. I mean,
it is nice for the one time. Well, the Cowboys have had some luck with kickers, but it's also been some rough years in there as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Giants have a kicker in Graham Gano. When he's healthy, he's excellent.
He's very good.
But he hasn't been healthy now in two seasons. And now, we're on what the Giants are on what? This is their third kicker. So they started with Gano. Jamie Gillen, the punter, tried to field goal against the Washington Commanders, and that didn't work out. And or not a field goal, though. I think it was an extra point, or if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, he tried to kick. And then now Greg Joseph. And it's like the Giants have to stick with Greg Joseph probably because they did sign him off of the Lions practice squad. So they have to keep him on the 53-man roster, a minimum of 3 games. And apparently they don't feel that Jude McIntyre, who they have on the practice squad, is anywhere near being ready. Otherwise, they would have elevated him. So we'll see. But you're right. That could come down to, if it comes down to a field goal or something like that, that could be the difference.
Well,
and
even like halftime stuff, right? Like, okay, Dallas had a perfect example last week. Their offense was doing nothing all game. They get the ball right before halftime. They gain 25 yards after kneeling the ball in the end zone. And now you're in field goal range for a 65-yard attempt. Those type of plays, and I think this is going to be a closer game than what Dallas had against Baltimore last week, could end up being the difference between a win and a loss.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, we will find out. Will the Giants finally snap the Cowboys' hold over them? The Cowboys winning 13 of the last 14 meetings, I think going back to 2017, I want to say. And I think they have, 6 or 7 games in a row that they've beaten them. So the Cowboys, Giants got to start winning against the Cowboys if they want to have any chance of winning the division. Because right now the division looks like it's up for grabs. This early on, the Eagles really not playing like a powerhouse. The Cowboys struggling. Washington's up and coming, so that we'll keep an eye on them. But interesting stuff in the NFC East. So big game coming up Thursday night again. MetLife Stadium, Dallas Cowboys at New York Giants. Marcus and his co-host Lynn and McCool will have content for you after that game. I, of course, will have my recap and takeaways for you on the Locked On Giants podcast. Hope you will tune in. Folks, we want to thank you for tuning into today's crossover edition, Locked On Giants, Locked On Cowboys. We appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On NFL with the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins. Great stuff from those two guys. For Marcus Mosher, I'm Patricia Traina. Have a good one, everybody.